Elon Musk talked about what he thinks about the moon landing and whether it was real or fake, and he gave his strongest argument about this controversy. Also, we have stunning proof and details that might change your perception about this controversial question. Shocking new inconsistencies are surfacing, ranging from missing telemetry data, strange lightning artifacts, and unexplainable anomalies in NASA's own archives. While many still believe in the mission's success, others argue that too many pieces of the puzzle were lost, deleted, or deliberately hidden. But today we will analyze the ultimate evidence that will end the debate on the moon landing and whether it was real or fake once and for all, so let's break it down. In an interview with Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk weighed in on this topic. So when Tucker asked about this controversial topic, Elon was quick to shut down any idea that the moon landing might have been a hoax. And when Tucker asked if he believed it was real, Musk commented, "We went to the moon not once, but many times. And I think the Russians would have called us out on that one if it wasn't true." He emphasized that we definitely went to the moon. We went to the moon several times. We 100% went to the moon. He then explained that he knows in depth the technical designs of the rockets and spacecraft and that he has studied what went right and what went wrong. To Musk, the Apollo missions were not some illusion, but an extraordinary feat of engineering. It was a remarkable piece of technology, like an incredible piece of technology, to go to the moon in '69. That was like reaching into the future and pulling the future forward dramatically. So, since Musk, the man who has arguably become the face of modern space exploration, firmly believes in the validity of the initial moon landing in 1969, what can we say about what evidence is there to back his claims? One of the most common arguments raised by people who doubt the moon landing is about the missing stars in the Apollo photos and videos. Skeptics argue that if the astronauts were truly in space, then the stars would have been visible in the inky background. To them, the absence of stars is suspicious and suggests that the scenes may have been filmed on Earth under studio lighting conditions, where stars were either forgotten or deliberately left out. This point feels strong to doubters because it relies on what seems like common sense. Space is full of stars, so why can't we see them in the pictures? NASA's explanation, however, is rooted in the science of photography and lighting. Because, in theory, this is true, assuming that these lunar walks took place during the lunar night. But all adventures onto the moon's surface took place during the day. In addition, the lunar surface was brightly illuminated by the sun, which reflected strongly off the gray dust and the white spacesuits. Cameras were set with short exposure times and narrow apertures to properly capture the brightly lit astronauts and equipment, which meant dimmer objects like stars simply didn't register on film. In other words, the stars were there, but the camera settings made them invisible, just like how stars often don't show up in photos taken on Earth during the daytime. NASA has consistently pointed out that if the cameras had been adjusted to capture the stars, the moon's surface and the astronauts would have been completely overexposed and washed out. Thus, what looks like evidence of fakery is actually a natural result of how cameras work in extremely bright conditions. Also, skeptics point to the Apollo footage where the American flag looks like it's rippling or waving, even though there is no air or wind on the moon. To the human eye, it looks exactly like fabric moving in a breeze, which should not be possible in a vacuum. This makes people suspect that the flag was filmed on Earth inside a studio where a draft of air movement caused it to move. It is one of the most powerful visual arguments because it feels like common sense. In space, the flag should hang perfectly still. NASA's explanation is that the flag wasn't waving because of wind, it was moving because of physics. When astronauts twisted and pushed the flagpole into the lunar soil, the motion caused the fabric to ripple, and with no air resistance to dampen it, the movement lasted longer than it would on Earth. In addition, the flag was specially designed with a horizontal crossbar to keep it extended, since normal cloth would just hang limply in low gravity. The wrinkles you see are from it being tightly folded during transport, giving it a waving appearance even when still. So while it looks like wind, it's actually a combination of astronaut handling, fabric creases, and the unique physics of a vacuum. However, what's fascinating in 2025 is Elon Musk's remarks about space having once again sparked discussion among moon landing conspiracy circles. And many people think that even Elon Musk does not believe that the moon landing really happened. Now, as you know, while NASA and private companies set their sights on Mars, the estimated 6-month journey each way is still a massive challenge. Musk himself has questioned why humanity hasn't prioritized returning to the closest celestial body first, noting, bluntly on Twitter, only 66 years from first flight to landing on the moon in 1969. Here we are, 76 years later, cannot yet return to the moon. We should have been on Mars by now. For many in the industry, this frustration resonates as the stagnation is often blamed on budget cuts and regulatory hurdles, a stark contrast to the explosive technological momentum of the 20th century. But for many people, this was a reason to believe that even Musk has now doubts about this achievement. During the interview with Tucker Carlson, Musk also framed the moon landing as more than just science. He pointed out that it was an important ideological battle with communism, and that the United States proved capitalism could achieve what the Soviets could not, because they couldn't put a post on the moon and capitalism could. So in other words, beyond the technical proofs that he cited, Musk argued the political context itself reinforces the reality of the missions. If it hadn't happened, rival nations like the Soviet Union would have immediately exposed the lie. Because one very important argument that even today is hard to explain is about radiation. Moon landing skeptics often point to the Van Allen radiation belts as proof the missions could not have happened. These belts, made up of intense radiation trapped by Earth's magnetic field, circle the planet and pose a real danger to human health. Skeptics argue that astronauts passing through them in 1969 with no advanced shielding or modern technology should have been fatally irradiated. To them, it is almost impossible to believe fragile spacecraft made of thin aluminum walls could protect humans from radiation levels that scientists today warn about. Now, this does sound convincing because radiation is invisible, deadly, and difficult to shield against, so it feels like an insurmountable obstacle for 1960s technology. NASA's answer is that the Van Allen belts are dangerous only with long-term exposure. The Apollo spacecraft traveled through the thinnest parts of the belt and crossed them very quickly in about an hour. Because of this short passage, astronauts were exposed to only a small radiation dose, comparable to a chest X-ray or less than what some airline pilots accumulate over time. The spacecraft's thin aluminum hull provided additional protection, and mission planning carefully avoided the highest radiation zones. According to NASA, the exposure levels were far below the threshold for harm, and radiation monitoring during and after the missions confirmed the astronauts received safe doses. Now, at the end of the day, the moon landing debate shows how one of humanity's greatest achievements has also become one of its most questioned events. For skeptics, details like missing stars, strange shadows, or the Van Allen belts fuel doubts that just won't die. But NASA and countless scientists argue that every claim has a clear explanation rooted in physics, photography, and mission records. So whether you believe it was the ultimate victory of science or the biggest hoax in history, one thing is certain: the moon landing continues to spark curiosity, controversy, and heated discussion more than 50 years later. And that is why people are still talking about it today.